Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Louvain-la-Neuve, and also to those people who are online already. Yeah. Time heals all wounds, they say. So we all know this proverb, and although its origin is disputed, the Greek poet Menander in 300 BC already claimed that time was the healer of all necessary evils. And Geoffrey Chaucer in the 14th century would also claim, as time hurt, as time doth them cure. Most people would, I fear, not agree. I admit I only used it as a catchy title because it refers to time, Chronos. And with the disagreement on the date of the eruption of Santorini volcano in mind, we can only hope that with the passing of years, we're getting closer in solving this conundrum, in healing. I do remember that when a high date for the Santorini eruption was considered in the 70s by Bettencourt and Weinstein and Michael, that a date in the middle of the 17th century, in fact 1688 plus minus 57 or around 1645 BC, was the one that scientists were thinking of. And Sheridan Bauman's 1990 radiocarbon dating book even stated that this date was proven beyond doubt. And those who have followed recent discussions know that this is now unlikely and that the 16th date is more probable. So there may be a sense of, or better, a time of healing imminent. Time is something that has fascinated scientists and artists of all times, mostly because it's difficult to grasp and often because it's regarded in a less than positive way. Time is said to destroy all beauty, and Chronos, Saturn in Roman mythology, devouring his children, has been a favorite theme in painting despite its gruesomeness. Time, I hope not, also destroys love. For us archaeologists, however, the most relevant proverb is undoubtedly that time destroys all things. Tempus edax rerum, time devourer of all things. A phrase that Roman poet Ovid used in his Metamorphoses long time ago. It is, and it remains quite popular in funerary contexts and around clocks and things like that. But its presence in a painting by Hermanus Postumus, Herman Postma, a Dutch painter who worked in Rome around 1540, is probably the most telling indication of how time results in the creation of ruined landscapes. Hence its use as a poster for this workshop. This painting was only rediscovered in the 1980s and presented by Ruth Rubenstein in the Burlington magazine of 1985. Ravenous time and envious age, you destroy everything, the inscription reads. And all over the painting are ruins and fragments of statues, some of which are real, but others entirely fictitious. Rubenstein, in fact, argued it was also a plea to his contemporaries to save Rome's ruins. In anthropology, Johannes Fabian's Time and the Other of 1983 inaugurated a series of time-related studies. Moreover, Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time of 1988 added the theoretical cosmology angle to the discussion. And much of the early work on time in archaeology from the 1980s and 1990s revolved around the idea of time as socially or culturally constructed. In 2004, Gavin Lucan's book, The Archaeology of Time, was published, in which time as a theoretical concept and it was used and how it was used in contemporary archaeology was discussed. In 2008, however, Laurent Olivier set off a new trend and paradigm with his Sombre abîme du temps, the dark abyss of time, arguing that the past was all around us, in the now, launching what is termed actuality, kairos in Greek. And Lucas has now introduced this concept also in his recently published Making Time, the Archaeology of Time Revisited. Lucas Formers defends the idea that things do not exist in time, but they make time, exploring to what extent material culture produces time. And this, I expect, will be at the heart of our discussions. This said, Lucas is not an enthusiast supporter of the notion of chronology. While it is considered as the backbone of the humanities and placing events in time and in their correct chronological order is how history is written, Lucas only accepts that it is great for ordering events and objects. It in itself does not give us history, but merely its empty shell. Even chronology and archaeological dating, Lucas says, often taken as the paradigm of natural or physical time in archaeology, is not one thing, but a stitched together, composite weave of multiple temporalities. Relative time, the order of succession, and absolute time, age and duration, will be intrinsically interwoven in the present workshop, especially when we talk about the date of the Santorini eruption. For archaeologists, as here at Chesme, finding Santorini tephra in stratigraphical layers of late Minoan 1A pottery is a clear indication of relative time. The entire issue is hence to find out when this was in absolute dates. And organizing a workshop around this theme hence seemed appropriate, especially since Tiziano Fantuzzi obtained an FSR incoming postdoc here at UC Louvain. And the Santorini eruption is evidently at the core of the discussions in our Thales project, which explores the impact of the eruption on contemporary societies, and this within a comparative context. If we want to understand potential causality between the eruption and the archaeological changes we notice in the period afterwards, it is important to have at least some idea on the length of the period implied. In the extreme case, now no longer defended, the eruption would have taken place in the middle of the 17th century, and the fire destructions heralding the end of the Minoan polypalatial society around 1460 BC, 200 years later, an unlikely scenario to claim a direct link between the two events. The later the eruption can be placed in time, the more likely a crisis scenario becomes. And here the third radiocarbon revolution and the use of Bayesian modeling has aided a lot by providing dates with a much better resolution than earlier on. This said, chronometric hygiene, as Fricks already adopted in 1989, remains important. The notion that our C14 dates need to be cleaned from atmospheric variation, reservoir effects, and isotopic fractionation to be more reliable. I want to finish my short introduction by thanking all speakers, present and remote, because we have also a little change, because also Stefanos Gimatzidis will be a remote speaker, and because of some a flu he caught. For the speakers for their willingness to contribute, and Colin MacDonald for his readiness to preside the different sessions. He will be the timekeeper, which is an appropriate title, I think, for this conference, and guiding us through discussions. But also Nicole Bush of the event organization of the Faculty of Arts for her help, Sylvie the driver here at the museum, Nicolas Kress for the website and booklet, Florence Guignot for the poster, and Louis Dautet here, Kylian Regnier over there, and maybe Caterina Fabricazzi, if she's healthy again, for general assistance. And funding, of course, comes from the RRC Talos, the Research Center SEMA, the Institute INCAL, as well as the generous private funding of the IWIS holding in Italy. In general, like most conferences will be present, but online are those by Professor Bitak, Professor Eriksson, Professor Manning, Professor Dr. Wiener, Dr. Van Talken, and Dr. Gimatzidis. And now I'll give over the floor to Tiziano, who's sitting over there.